Is it just one shot?
Yeah, single shot.
Honest.
The concept was that like the girls' bathroom was really, really nice and everything's, all beautiful in there, and the boys' bathroom was like really grungy, and so the guys are just trying to get into my world.
I shot it with Mark Kohr directing it.
And I worked with Mark Kohr on it, who's an old friend who has since...
You had Mark Kohr, is it, do the last 2 videos, and then for
I just think this is the greatest video ever made.
It was actually really good. It's good.
What's
Out there, the Mr.Krinkle video I think is cool because it just,
we happen to like it a lot.
Yeah, but I think it was a very original idea, and it was fun.
Check out a video from Fashion Nugget. This is Cake with the Distance.
I remember Kirk giving me shit saying, man, how'd you get on MTV? We couldn't even get on MTV because we got on with the John the Fisherman video.
Everything to everyone.
We did have a $60,000 video for it, though.
And it played twice on MTV.
We got played
Twice.
The director makes his way into the video, just like Hitchcock.
Mark.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Like Thibaut.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought, Thibaut. Well, it's good to meet you, Thibaut. Yeah.
It's good to meet you, Mark.
Well, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, a trip to the US back in like 2010, so like a long time ago, to Berkeley. So I'm quite well aware of the sightseeing and all the San Francisco area. So that's where you live, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and we walked past a building, and that building was familiar, and it was the Fantasy Studios.
Oh, yeah.
So where Green Day recorded Dookie. So right after this experience, it completely made me like interested, like, yes, I want to work in music. So I did a course, and I graduated in 2017. And since that period, I worked for a label. I'm trying to be like a music publicist, like, so I'm trying to get knowledge on like how it works with the press, like the Spotify playlist, all that kind of stuff. So and I've been a huge fan of your work since like, I don't know, like probably like 2005 or 2004.
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's very nice to say. Yeah. Wow. I think that's great that you're pursuing that, as a music publicist, in all these different ways, and you're saying, okay, I want to understand the business, but also the social part, and that's, that's fantastic because of course, so much of it is social. It's being with people, right? And it's being gracious and understanding and getting in conversation, right? And loving stuff, right? Because, you can't really do something well unless you really love it, But like the first Green Day video, it was
Longview.
Longview in their place. Yeah. We shot it in their house, in their apartment. They were living in a Victorian in Berkeley, right across from what's Whole Foods now, but it was another supermarket at that time. It's like it was a basement place, it's a place that used to be under the house, and I'll walk by there from time to time, and I'll be like, thank you so much, and I think, it's too bad that people don't know that's, that's where we shot it, because it's just this, very average place, but part of the look of that video, I think, is because it was shot in a place where the ceiling was very low, it was a, cramped space, both the practice room and, in the living room that, where
with the couch.
Yeah.
So, which music directors were you a huge fan of, and were you influenced or inspired by any French music video directors in your own music video work?
I loved photography. I loved photography. I loved filmmaking. And, I studied it. I went to school, I studied art, meaning I went to university and studied art in school. I didn't have much money. I went to San Francisco State University, which is kind of a discount, university, but still, it was at the time, a very artful place. And so there, I studied image making, composition, and so forth. I studied film there as well, but I didn't get a degree in film. I got a degree in just a bachelor's degree, but with emphasis in art and in photography. I was looking at all the photography that was out there at that time and, really loved it. And so, at the time, there was Jean-Paul Good, who was doing just incredible work. I mean, it was just wonderful. And, and I loved, his stuff, the way that he was playing in terms of comedy and theatrically and also visually, that he was combining, those worlds, because at the time it was still to combine design, especially really bold, strong design, and comedy and fashion, wasn't a very typical thing. It was still kind of new, I did have that French girlfriend and I think it was in 86 or maybe 85.
Oh.
Yeah, 85. And so, I went to Paris and I stayed with her and her mother for a month in Vincennes. And it was exciting. That's when, Philip Stark started his thing, around that time. I think, I mean, there are all these other things that had influenced me before then, as well. I loved, Hollywood movie musicals, from the 40s and 50s, the ones that were in Technicolor, and even before that in the 30s, like, Fred Astaire and so forth. I loved how those were shot, and lit, and I love the color that was used in Technicolor. And I really wanted to understand kind of, what I was looking at and how that was built. And then when I was in school and university, we studied, the history of photography, the history of image making. But I particularly enjoyed a lot of the fashion photography and the kind of at the time, the more recent history of fashion photography that went from, this started kind of in the 50s or in the late 40s and then moved through the 50s and 60s, but a lot of it was European fashion, like the stuff that Richard Avedon had done, when he went to Paris in the early 50s, where he was combining, where he, that particular photographer, Richard Avedon, that he wasn't limiting himself into kind of one genre, but he was doing both street photography and very high design kind of studio photography, very austere, very stark, kind of environmental photography, where he would go to a location and take pictures in the context, exercising his ability as a visual designer. And so, I was kind of, I was very much inspired by all those people, but, in particular, you're asking about French, Mon Oncle and, and, Jacques Tati and other, French filmmakers who were doing stuff that was also very, that was bringing visual design to environmental settings and so forth. And now I'm able to talk about that and say it in kind of a fairly articulate way. But at the time, I was just loving, looking at that imagery and trying to understand what that imagery was about, and feeling it was cool and so forth. But I know now that essentially, I was studying it, and really trying to understand. And at the time, I remember too, in 85, I think 1985, there was a magazine called The City. There's a French magazine, I think, called City Magazine.
The City, yeah.
Yeah, The City. And it was new, and it was really cool. It was really cool, and it was a big part of it was the images, the photography, and they were kind of putting out, it was presenting, photographers who were new. And this is when I was in college. I was still a junior in college, but they presented one photographer who was who is David LaChapelle. And it was before David LaChapelle did all the kind of the really designy, the people, before he was just doing, black and white portraits. Yeah. That were in like, Interview magazine, because that style of portraiture was, from Interview magazine was popular. And it was essentially a kind of a new version of what Harrell, James Harrell, I believe, was doing in Hollywood in the 40s and 50s and maybe the 30s. But he was doing essentially 3-point lighting, so, key, short side key and hard backlight, or even, double backlight. And then, very, again, portrait as design, as opposed to just portrait as a record of the person. Art is, to me and my brother, we feel that art is a conversation that happens in a culture. Conversations, they express themselves in sculpture and in dance and in this and that and visually and so forth. But they're all pieces of what's come before us, okay? And that's why you study art, is because you need to know what's happened before you, so you can join effectively the conversation, okay? And contribute your own thing to that conversation. Like, Michel Gondry, right?
Oh, of course.
A genius, right? But, his work is inspired from other people, just like my work and everyone's work is, but he made so much his thing, he did it so articulately, like you look at Around the World.
Yes. With people jumping the stairs and following the music. Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool. I mean, genius, beautiful. And, to me, I look at it and I go, well, what's the primary? The primary inspiration is Busby Berkeley, movies from the 30s. And I'm not minimizing it. He, I wish that he was still doing work. I mean, his work is so brilliant, and he does it with such heart. He puts out very loving, very playful messages that are very helpful. When he did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, he worked with Charlie, Kaufman, and Charlie's genius. But for so long, Charlie, he finished his work, like the stories would finish in a very dark tone, and it's fine. We can put whatever subtext we want to on our pieces, but it might be hard for the viewer, and I was just always amazed at Eternal Sunshine, how I just thought, oh my God, Michelle must have just freaking wrestled Charlie to the mat and said, no, I'm not going to finish this how you want, which is to have them stuck in a cycle of getting together and then removing their memory and getting back together and removing their memory as old people. I don't accept that. I don't know what that conversation was, but Michelle pushed it to where it's like, no, I just want to have them get back together. That's good for me. I'm good. That's where I want it to be.
And then to play right now, the MTV premiere of their new video. We've been playing the live version from Woodstock '94, but they just sent us the concept version of When I Come Around. Here's Green Day.
How did you come up with the treatments for the When I Come Around and Hitching Ride video? Because those two videos are quite interesting, the way how they were shot and edited.
Yeah. Usually I was given something from the band, okay? And I usually ask, hey, do you have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts? Because and now I know why I asked that. I do want to know. I want the universe to push on me, okay?
and we kind of got to choose the direction we wanted. It was Mark Kohr, who had done a bunch of cool videos at that point for Green Day.
I think the reason why we really wanted to work with him was we felt like he was able to really capture the personality of the band.
And I want information and stuff that I wouldn't have maybe come up with myself, okay? Something that's gonna, you know, take me in a direction that might not be expected. Yeah, the one where people are looking, you know,
yes,
kind of in a circle, is, you know, I was told by the band's management at the time, this guy, Jeff Saltzman, and he said, oh yeah, Mark, you know, they want us to do another video, you know, the record company for
reprise records. Right?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, for a song When I Come Around. Well, you know, they were it was yeah, they were with Warner, you know, Warner Brothers.
Oh yes, Warner Brothers. Yes. And the first definitely was Longview, but then maybe I think maybe it's between Basket Case and When I Come Around, because Basket Case was maybe released like in the summer, and When I Come Around was maybe like the video was probably released like in October or November. I think.
Yeah, well, the part that's confusing, yeah, the part that's confusing to me is I remember doing the pitch for When I Come Around in this restaurant on Market Street, okay, and it was during and it was when we were shooting another video for Green Day.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I could swear. Beforehand, I was told by Jeff, the manager, he said, oh, they're going to do a song When I Come Around, and they want to make the song about voyeurism. Okay. And I was like, okay, you know, voyeurism, that's odd, in a way that has bad intent. Okay. You know, and that they're doing it secretly. Okay. And I was like, yeah, I wonder what they mean by that. And this is Jeff, the manager. He said, I think it should be about like an evil kid, meaning a boy, looking through a window at a girl. And I was like, And I said to myself in my head, I said, you have to be out of your fucking mind. I'm making children's educational television. Okay. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but that's what I was saying in my head. I was like, you know, what am I going to do with this? You know, you're a creative guy. Let's figure something out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make it about looking at another person. I'm going to make it about voyeurism, but I'm going to do it how I think it'll work, nicely. You know, not nicely, but you know, wait, in a way that's interesting, a way that's appropriate. You know,
with the girl watching in the telescope, like
yeah. And so what I did was I was like, okay, classic, you know, listen to it a million times and write down a million notes and just think of 1,000 things, right? And I was like, oh, you know what I think I'll do is I will make it about the subject of, like, the subtext will essentially be about looking at the beautiful other, okay? And having a preconception about the beautiful other. You know, like, you know, you're walking down the street and, you know, when you're young, you see a beautiful girl and you go, oh boy, look at that beautiful other. And you have an imagining about her, you know. But when you're there, you know, when you're there with her, when you know her, whole different thing, you know. Like there's all this complexity, there's all this real personness, etc. But the funny thing is that she too has an experience of, as a human, of looking out and seeing the beautiful other, okay? Or seeing the other and being afraid of the other, okay? Having fear of the other. You know, essentially making up a story about what's going on with that other, because there's a separation, you know, and you don't know. So you make up a story, you know. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make it about that, because I'd much rather make it about that than make it about malintent, you know. I remembered, you know, that the wonderful editorial sequence in, of course, well, not of course, but maybe, but in a 2001 A Space Odyssey, when he arrives in the French hotel room, okay, when the pod, Dave Bowman arrives in the French hotel room, you know, he's looking out, you know, he's looking out of the window. Yeah, he sees himself as a spaceman outside the pod. Then it cuts to a close-up, and then it cuts to him outside the pod. And then it cuts to him close-up outside the pod, standing. But he's looking at something. And it cuts to him in the distance in the chair eating, you know. And then it cuts to him in the chair eating, and he looks up to the spot where the spaceman was, but there's no spaceman. And then he looks down and he sees himself in bed, you know, knocks over the glass, and then he looks up, and then and then he's in bed, and then it cuts to him in bed, and he looks up and he sees a monolith, right? And it's this genius editorial sequence. I just thought it was incredible, you know, that you're doing this shifting of perception, you know. I'm going to use that that editorial sequence to try to communicate the subtextual idea, and so that you have the first person experience of looking at the other, and you know they're asking a question about that person up in the window, or they're saying, ooh, that's a bad guy down in the street. And then
with
there you are
with the cigarettes, he's walking around,
you know, like, and so you are being judgmental as the viewer for the little girl in reference to the guy, and then there you are, then you're the guy, and you're being judgmental. You're making the judgments that the guy would make about seeing the couple kiss, and then you're the couple that's kissing, and you're making a judgment about the old man in the window, you know. And so I was trying to communicate that base aspect of being human, that we judge or we have an opinion about the other, but that we are in fact the other. Okay, you know, essentially it's about trying to communicate to the audience and give them some growth or change. You know, that you, in seeing the other, need to have some grace for them, because essentially they are feeling the same things that you are. They are in the same shoes that you are in this moment, you know.
Because in that video in particular, the moment where Billy Joe is picking up the phone in the video, was it like improvised, or was it in the original treatment? Improvised. Okay.
It was a gift.
Okay, because it was like, I always found it so like random, and it always like stuck out, like picking up the phone. And
yeah, I know, yeah, I know, it's so good. Yeah, I know. Well, you know, because I'll teach music video, you know, and I say, you know, what happens is that you, in going to do your piece, you know, and going to shoot your video, you know, you need to, you know, work this way to come up with an idea. Then you need to plan and break it into parts and figure out all the parts you need to make it. And, you know, you need to build your production, and then I said, then you're going to go to the shoot. But the thing is, you're going to know everything about your video to a point where you've written a shot list and you hardly look at it, because you know so well what you need to do. Say, if you just shoot that shot list, it'll be boring. What you need to do is you need to allow for the universe to give you gifts, okay, of the day. And the gifts are, you know, you may think they're a disaster. You know, you may think, oh my God, you know, there's this horrible thing that's happened. because it's different than what I thought. But you need to be open to understanding if it's a gift that you're being given, and that everyone feels and they're searching for, right? Like, you know, in that video, you know, you probably watched it and you're like, this means something. What does it mean?
Maybe there's like a hidden message of picking up the phone. Or...
Yeah, exactly. You know, but then what happens is, you know, the actors and the people, they give you fantastic gifts because they're brilliant and they're beautiful, you know.
But I also love when you're holding the Santa Claus head. Where did that come from?
It was just an impulsive decision, but it had to do with capitalism, probably.
You know, like Billy did that, you know, and I was like, oh, you know, yeah, you know, it's so great. And at the end of one of the takes, okay, like, you know, we'd shoot these, you know, long dolly takes, and they walk along, and, you know, and we get to the end of this take. I remember it was, you know, we're back up against the, you know, where you go through with your ticket, you know.
Yes.
But the dollar would come up, you know, then they'd stop because it would, you know, cut, right? And we stopped, and Billy went into this dance, you know,
oh.
and it was hilarious, and it was on film because, like, we didn't cut the camera yet, and it was short, but I was like, oh my God, you know. That's fantastic. He's like he's like a song and dance man, you know. And I was like, that I want to get that someday. Okay. Like, I want to get that performance. Okay. Because they were punked, you know. And I was like, you know, he freaking, he's like a showman, you know. This is like showbiz, you know. And I never got to, but you know, Sam Bear got to do that. He got to do that stuff. You know, he got to mine that, and I didn't get to. You know, I was like,
the band dancing in the holiday video, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
like that. And I remember there was one, like, when they were in a car. You know, it was like there's like a rear projection, and they were in a car and stuff. And yeah. You know, and Billy was great. You know, I was like, oh man. You know?
Most of the time we like to work with Mark Kohr. So
what is it about Mark's stuff that you like?
Mark's a freak. He likes to do a lot of weird things, and I mean, like, we did Hitchin' a Ride. He wanted to have like a giant with a midget on his shoulder grooming his hair.
Hitching a Ride video. That one looks really like 40s, 50s like vibe, kind of like with the big man, like messing around with the van. That was like really cool video. Like,
yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, well, you know, I love the groove, you know.
Yeah, like Stray Cats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, there's something about it that just felt kind of clubby to me, you know. And so I was thinking about like old animation and how everything like moved all the time, you know. It's like everything is in action. It's like, you know, just whether it's the drinking glasses or is it the people at the door, you know, but everyone is always like, you know, on the groove, you know. And like, I was working really hard in Los Angeles and in Hollywood, you know, at the time, and me and my crew, like my producer and I and all these people that I work with, we'd work for like a year and a half straight, you know, music video to music video to music video to music video, and we were exhausted. The break was coming, okay, like it was coming. It's like, okay, here it is, right after this one, we're gonna be able to take a break. And then that song came along, and I was like, oh damn, this song is so good, you know. I've got to make a video for this song. Oh, you know, by the way, the kind of the warped buildings, you know, that was inspired
in the background behind the man. Yeah,
that was inspired from the Bellagio. So, you know, years before I went to the Bellagio, you know, with my girlfriend, you know, and it was incredible. I think we saw, I could swear it was before this singer named Sade, you know, had become familiar. She was this African American singer. I saw her perform there. It was incredible. But anyway, so you know, if you ever go there, you could look at the website.
Yeah.
You know, the interior has been the same since like the 40s. I'm not sure when it was built, but it's super cool. I mean, I know it's kind of you know, maybe you'll think it's cheesy. I don't know, but you know, just my girlfriend and I would go to these clubs. They were incredible. It's kind of like I was just playing with sort of that, again, that sort of like, you know, 1930s cool club. You know,
with the
cool
with the clothes and like
exactly, and even down to, you know, having the tall guy and the short guy. You know, it's sort of like people did that in movies back then. The treadmill, you know, it's like that. At the time, it was hard to get that. You know, like I had to really push for it, and we didn't have enough money to make a custom one. You know, the treadmill. You know, again, you know, okay, so you know, like an artist steals from 1,000 sources, right? You know, it's what we do, you know, because, you know, like there's this phrase, you know, like a poor artist steals from 1 or 2 sources, but a great artist steals from 1,000. We all get inspired by stuff, okay? And so, you know, art is conversation, and we join it, you know. And we join it because we are articulate in that conversation.
If you want to see a clip from our fabulous video, we're down to this, click the finger with the rings on them. And if
before having a conversation with you, I like went through all of your music videos, so I watched everything. And what struck there's like 60 videos. I was like, yeah. And what struck out to me is some videos are very like colorful and stylistic. Like for example, the cake video, the 2 cake videos that you did, the moths video also is very colorful. And on the stylistic sides, I'd say the soul coughing video, which like is really stylistic with like the frames and going back and everything. So where did you get inspiration for the color choices in the color palettes? Like another example, another video that I really like is the that dog video.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
There's
it's
like
fun. I know. I like that one too. It's fun in terms from a color standpoint. Yeah. Well, you know, that's an interesting question because I'm colorblind. You see, you know, I don't know what the term is in French, but it means you know, you can't differentiate between certain colors. And I have a red-green deficiency, and it was hard for me, you know. As a kid, when I was a kid in school, you know, I would, you know, use a color, you know, with crayons, and you know, I would use the wrong colors, you know. You know, people would give me a hard time for it. They'd be like, "Oh my God, you know, why are you making this red or this green or this brown?" And you know, it felt bad, right? You know, it was because you know you're like, "Oh my God, what am I stupid?" You know, and then you know they discovered, "Oh yeah, well you have a color blindness," you know, and then you're like, "Oh great, you know, I have a color blindness," you know. See, I can see red, I can see green, but not always, okay? And what was interesting was the Technicolor work, I could really see those colors beautifully. And I kind of have a philosophy about that now, maybe why. I'm going to study photography. I need to work with color photography, you know? And then but when I was in college, you know, I was like, I really wanted to know lighting. You know, I need to know how to light an image, you know, use light effectively. And at the time it was like there's strobes, you know, and strobe lights. And I didn't have the money to buy that kind of gear. And the school I went to didn't have that gear. So I couldn't work with it. But also strobes are like, you don't see it, right? You don't see it until you make an image, you know, and you have to go through a chemical process and so forth. So there's a long time delay between, you know, seeing this light that you can't even see because it happens in an instant. And I was like, okay, when I graduate from school, I'm going to work in the movies so I can work on sets and I can see the light, you know, so I can see how they're sculpting space, you know. So that's what I did. I got a job at a little studio in Orange County, which was south of LA, where my parents lived. So I could, see the light. And I was always good in science and so forth. And, I knew electronics. And so I could fix the light. So what I got a job at a studio as a guy who worked on the stage, and I would, bring out and put back lights and bring things out, keep it clean. And I would fix their lights, And so I got to see lighting. And so what I did is I read every book I could on color. And there weren't that many. There was like Johannes Itten. There was another one, I can't remember what it was. There was like a book on palettes, like color designer, like a interior designer kind of thing for like furniture, wallpaper, and paint. And there was a book even by Goethe on color. And so I just read whatever I could, and my primary understanding of color comes from the Johannes Itten. And a lot of what Johannes Itten was talking about was not just creating mood and feel, but also placing the eye within the frame, okay? And so what happened was I got an understanding of how color functioned for the viewer, okay? And how color would place the eye, and how the mechanics of color in terms of how to create bright, how to create muted, etc. And then I loved, like I said, the Technicolor stuff, and they very much worked with color contrast. They worked with specific palettes. And so I got an understanding at that time also that was even a possibility. Okay, I mean, I wasn't taught that in school, but I just learned that, I can choose, I can choose colors, and I can choose proportionally how much of one color or another will exist in the frame. Because Johannes Itten, he talked about how, let's just say you have an orange field and you have a tiny dark blue square within it, okay? Well, that tiny dark blue square is going to have a lot of power. It's almost going to, because first of all, it's in contrast to the orange in terms of the color wheel, okay? And then that little square, what happens is the eye wants to equalize the color. It wants to have one half be blue and the other half be orange, okay? Like that's what it would like. But when you put all of that whole one half, when you condense it down to one little square, it's going to take the power of that whole side, and it's going to condense it into that little spot. So that blue is going to be very powerful. It's going to draw your attention. Okay, it's going to look blue. Okay. Now, if I had blue and a lighter shade of blue, it's not going to have as much power, right? So it just was basically like I had gained an understanding of the mechanics of color in regard to foreground, background, person, environment, one person to another, etc. And in fact, I did a video for this band Dance Hall Crashers, okay?
Yes, the song Enough.
Right? Enough, yeah, it's all, the background's all red, right? And like that video I did specifically in that palette for the one singer with the black hair, okay? And the reason was she was very insecure, she was afraid she wasn't pretty, and she really wanted, like a visual treatment that, I mean, she didn't say this, she said it in so many words, but I'll say it very clearly. She wanted a visual treatment that would complement her as much as possible. And so I was like, okay, she's got light skin, she's got black hair, she has all this like geometry to her face and her hair. How am I gonna make her look great? I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a black, her hair is black. Let's do a black and red palette. you know, which it can be very effective. Of course, you know, essentially the white stripes made black and red their thing, you know. These palettes, you know, like different palettes are just classic, and black and red is a classic palette. I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go black, red, and blue to make the skin nicer, you know. And that whole video, that visual design was to suit her face so that she would look stronger. Sometimes you do that. Sometimes like the visual treatment will come from the person's face who you are working with, because they have there's something unique about their face, and how do I bring appeal and interest and architecture to the face of the person that I'm working with.
That's so fascinating that you're colorblind and you did all those like really colorful videos. I had no like, that's like proper like impressive. Like wow, all your colorful videos stuck out, but it's like that's really mind blowing for a person that's colorblind. To do all those like flashy like videos.
Yeah. I know. Well, you know, it's that thing. It's like, and I tell my students this, you know, like on the first day of class, what I do is I break everyone into twos, you know, and I say, okay, you know, I want you to answer these questions, like with each other, ask each other these questions, you know, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you love? What strengths do you bring to this class? And what weaknesses do you bring? It could be anything. It could be, oh, I can't talk to girls. It just makes me crazy. I lose my mind, you know. See, really anything, you know. Like I'm afraid to work with actors, or, you know, I'm bad with the technical stuff, you know. You know, it's important you're able to identify what you feel your weakness is, because, you know, your weakness, if you really understand it and you really embrace it, it can be your strength, you know. And I tell them this story. I say, you know, I'm colorblind, you know, and you know, during my time, I was known as a director who worked with color. I was known as the color guy.
Oh wow!
And you know, and I said, you know, and that's very funny, you know, that was the case, you know, and because I made the color choices, and then I also worked with good people, you know, like you know, meaning colorists, because you know, at the time, you know, you take your film to get, you know, to have color done, you know, and you know, I worked with some of the best people in LA. I mean, they're actually still the best, you know. There's this guy Dave Hussey, you know, he's still there, you know, doing his thing, you know. Yeah.
Videos, a lot of like your videos, like the musicians are dressed in a way where they're wearing like different colors and clothes. Were you involved that much with the fashion, like the clothing that musicians were wearing, or did you just let the musicians choose what they were wearing on the day? Or
it was usually where basically I would make a request, you know, but not too hard. Okay. You know, I'd say, well, you know, I'd love you to, you know, whatever it may be, you know, whether it was a color or whether it was a brightness or darkness or whether it was a shine or not, you know, I'd make a request. And most of the time I would have them deal with it. And the reason it was because I wanted them to be comfortable, but I wanted them also to think about something kind of new. And I would give them the reasons why. But, you know, I just always felt like that I just noticed that I would get the best if it was from the artist. Okay. Like if it was from them and the people that they work with, they would be the most comfortable. Because, yeah, I work with stylists, you know, of course. At the time, you know, I would have this, you know, a stylist, hair, and makeup, and, you know, like it was a fully differentiated set, you know. But most of the time, you know, I would leave it to them.
So I would be at Tony's house, and she would come down the stairs, and she had a little bindi on, and I started wearing them just for fun. And I think Just a Girl video was one of the first times I really, after that, I always wore one. But before that, I would wear them here and there. You know, I thought it looked really cool.
You know, sometimes crossed over more, where the stylist would work with the artist and they would come up with something together that was along the lines of what I was hoping for. Because, you are, like you've heard me say, you are placing the eye, and you are trying to bring appeal to that person, and you are trying to grow their image in some way. You're not trying to go back and do something they've done that was successful, but you're trying to evolve it in some way that seems appropriate, that seems right for where their image might go.
You did like a lot of like black and white music videos, like Primus, Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Alanis, Morissette. When shooting those videos, do you shoot it in black and white, or do you shoot it in color and then transfer it on black and white? Because I know Basket Case video was in black and white first, and then you made the step to color. Is it challenging working on black and white music videos?
No, that's a good question. Basket Case, that was shot black and white, 16 millimeter. And I wanted it to be 16 millimeter because I wanted the gate weave, and I wanted the graininess of the black and white. Okay. And then put the color on top of it. And I wanted the lighting to be very flat for that video, to be very, because the color was going to be applied. All right. And that was going to differentiate the forms, with Alanis Morissette. That was 16 again. I wish it was 35, but we shot it in black and white, and I can't remember the particulars of it. I mean, the main reason why I wanted that one to be in black and white was because I wanted it to have a feeling of the 60s and 70s street photographers, but mainly the 50s street photographers, like Lee Freelander. And I think it was Lee Freelander. I'm trying to remember, because there was a book that inspired that video. And I think it was Lee Freelander, but I can't remember. But it was, but the imagery was very stacked. Okay, what I mean by that is like multi layers of people. Like all the frames are really full of people. Okay.
When they're walking behind her and in front of her, like when it's like slow motion,
and the images I was looking at were street photographs of masses of people, and I wanted that black and white street photographer vibe, and I wanted the images to be stacked, again, just full, a lot of depth. And so that's what we chose for that, and that was the reason why.
Girls are one, please. Here we go. Pictures up. Stop. Playback is rolling.
Yeah, like the black and white in that one on the beach was 35, I think. And what I was going for at the time was I was going for a kind of a 1950s television look of a black and white film, because they would shoot, and the film stocks, they didn't have a good anti-halation backing on the film, and so the light would go through the film and it would bounce off the pressure plate, which was silver, and it would put a extra exposure around the edges of the people and at the edges of black. Okay, like black stuff would have this glow on it, this kind of black softness. And so with that video, I was trying to replicate that look, and so we had like a silver. I made sure that we had a silver pressure plate on the back of the film, so that the film would hopefully get some of that aberration. But the film stock, it was, but the film stock got better, and they put a better anti-halation backing on the back of the film, so I didn't get as much of that effect. But still, it has a certain feel to it. That black and white has a certain vibe.
So
a brand new song. It's called Stuck With Me. Right?
The video that you directed is the Stuck With Me video with the black and white and the graphics from the Insomniac album. Do you remember? Do you have any particular memories on working on that project?
Yeah, no,
because it's like, because it's like really with like changing from black and white to the graphics and then back. That's like really cool.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. I tell you with that one. All right. So with that one, what I wanted to do. Well, okay. So we shot with Tilton's. We shot with tilt swivel optics. Okay. So it's a lens that that will bend. Okay. Well, like it's mounted to the camera. Okay. But the lens actually will do this in relation to the camera. Okay. So it in relation to the focal plane, it shifts. Okay. And so a lens is made so that it has a focal plane, right? So the light goes through and it's focused in one spot. Okay. So it's always going to be like that. Okay. Now if I shift my lens, the focal plane shifts with it. All right. So it changes the focus to be very narrow. It makes this extremely narrow, focus. And so, what we did was we shot with black and white. So, it's a layering. Okay. Again, I talked about it. Steal from 1,000 sources, right? So it's a layering of ideas because it was shot black and white. So I'm pivoting so during the takes, we're pivoting the lens and we're changing the focus on it. So the lens is, and it was kind of like the gift that we got on that day was that the focus wasn't smooth. Like the focus was kind of like a spring into position, and it looked cool. And so we're moving the lens and we're, refocusing during as it's being moved and as they're playing, plus, from my lighting background, we're doing lighting changes. Okay. Yes. Foreground background. Okay. So you have this, this focus that's changing, right? And then we're layering the shot. So, you have foreground background, and we're doing these lighting changes, but strong backlight, strong front light, and so forth. I wanted to make it feel like that music, because everything wants to come from the music, from the vibe of the music. You want to somehow put some visual with the music so that they both enhance each other. It's just how it is. Like you find some visual that the music will bring up. And then at the same time, that visual will bring the music up and it will make you aware of it, but then if you put a visual that is like that to ting, someone ting, or what, then it makes both of them brighter to work with that artwork. And so
the Winston Smith, right?
Yeah, he was a great guy. He was a really nice guy. And we brought in 2 animators, and I'd done animation previously, for years, Nightmare Before Christmas, and at the Colossal Pictures, we did all kinds of animation, and so I was no stranger to it. So I was able to go in and we were able to design stuff.
Read online, or I saw online that you did like a particular music video, but I don't know if it's you that directed. It's The Last Ketchup. Did you direct that video?
Oh,
because there's like, it says that directed by, in some websites it says directed by you, and in some other it says directed by another person. So I was like,
no,
it was so confusing. I was like,
well, it's essentially directed by another person. What happened was with that one was it my wife, she was working at Sony Music at the time.
Okay.
And as a music video producer, what do you call it? Commissioner. And her boss was like, "Hey, Mark, I have this video and it's horrible." I didn't think it was that bad. All right. It's a cheesy video, but it's all right, And she goes, "Can you shoot some additional stuff for it? I just want you to shoot like some people in tomato costumes dancing. And I don't even know if they're in the video that you saw, but
they're on the beach, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
I haven't watched the video in a long time, but I don't remember if there's people in ketchup like costumes.
Yeah, well, they're like this tomato costumes, a guy and a girl, and I was like, sure, but it wasn't my idea. It was just like I was just helping out, and so they just cut in. I don't know if I had anything to do with it or not. I can't even remember because it was nothing that I was that. It wasn't my thing,
Okay.
Other than directing these people, So I didn't really have much to do with it, although my name is on it.
Yeah. But that's one credit that I was surprised. I was like, wow, like he did Green Day video and then he did Last Ketchup. So,
I did that Shakira video.
Yes.
And that video was huge in Europe, I mean, it was huge in all the Spanish-speaking countries, it was massive. It didn't do much here. And that has a whole story with it too. But anyway.
We rented out half of that dollar store and we shot in the dollar store, but the other half of it was still open. So as we were shooting and like these things, there were real registers going off in the background and people were really
Another music video credit that caught my eye is the Lindsay Pagano, Everything You Are video. Because how are you approached to direct this video, and do you have any particular memories on shooting that video? Because I always found it super cool with the products from the same color in the aisles and the hallways.
Yeah, well, with that one, they said, hey, will you do this video for this girl? She's 13 years old, okay? And it was really tense. It was like her manager is really tough. And he wanted to make her really sexy. And I was like, I don't want to sexualize a 13-year-old girl. I don't want to do that. I don't think it's good for her as a person. And I was actually, what was interesting with that one was I had this friend at the time, and he was he worked in the commercial world. Okay. He worked in commercials. And, I'd done a few commercials with him, and he said, hey, Mark, why don't we do this video together? I'll come up with an idea for it and you direct it. I was like, okay, sure. And he listened to it and he said, hey, what would be really fun is, this, Everything You Are. Why don't you make it about, and I think he came up with the idea, like, why don't you make it about a store called Everything You Are? And essentially she goes in and that she's dissatisfied. Basically, it's like, because it's all product, it's all like stuff you can buy, it's all like in a box. And what happens is she's in there and she's kind of like, I can't get what I need here. What I need is from the heart, Great. And this is a video where I stole to directly, okay? Where I was looking at the time at those Gursky photographs. I think his name is Gursky, and he was doing these photographs of like these big scenes, and he did some famous ones of a store where it's pop, 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 as patterns of rows and so forth. And then I brought my own thing to it in the sense of saying, let's do a store, but have the products be very, very colorful than blocks, and we'll have the names of the products be very kind of silly and iconic of like what they're trying to sell that's fake and phony. Okay, like have a product like shampoo that's called Friendship, and another product that's called like Loyalty, or whatever. And so that's kind of where that came from. I wanted a shot in there of her pushing over a shopping cart full of products and them to spill out on the floor, but we ran out of time. But in that video, there's a guy in there, and that guy, he was French, and his name was Giacomo. It was Giacomo. He was a dancer in Hollywood at the time, and he was awesome, Giacomo. And he was so charismatic, okay, that when he came onto the set, you know, like whatever set he would come onto, because I worked with him on some other pieces, you know, and whenever he would show up, everyone would love him. Like all the girls would be like, oh, Giacomo's here, Giacomo. And he'd be like, yes, I am here. I am Giacomo. I mean, he wouldn't literally say that, but he would kind of almost be like that. And you just look at him and be like, oh my God, man, that guy, he really has it down. You know, he really knows how to enter a scene.
Your music video and commercial work is like very mind-blowing. You did like commercials for Gap, like, and another like bunch of commercials. Have you ever thought of like the idea of releasing like a director's label of your own work on like a video format or DVD, or like write a book about what it's really like being a music video director and commercial director?
You know, what happened, unfortunately, was, you know, and you probably heard this from I've read this from other sources, but, you know, in 2000, you know, my wife and I, our daughter was born, and she had severe epilepsy, you know, severe seizures. And, you know, and I grew up without a lot of money, and I grew up in a really good family, you know, where my parents, you know, really cared for me, you know. And so by default, that's what I did, you know, as I went to take care of my wife, my daughter. But yet at the same time, you know, Hollywood's very hard to have injured kids in, you know, kids who have problems. And it's a real challenge, you know, and socially, you know, to be going through real stressful, hard stuff in the family and then be producing at that level. And, you know, and it was very difficult for me to leave. And I didn't just leave. I mean, it was kind of like I left, but also it pushed me out, and, you know, it just stopped, you know.
There was too much stress and pressure.
Yeah. And so it was very hard for me to leave that, because I'd really tuned my mind to create new stuff all the time, you know, and I still have that mind, and it's difficult for me that way, because I love complex problems. I love them. And it's hard not to work in an environment where I get to do complex problems. And so it was sort of disappointing, you know, to have to leave that. Only thing I have in mind in terms of a book or this or that, the other thing is, you know, I have taught at a place called the San Francisco Academy of Art for 6 years. I quit actually recently. I may teach again. You know, I actually presented in Milan recently at a school.
In Italy.
Italy, yeah.
Oh wow.
And that was fun. It was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it. But what I was thinking about doing was maybe doing an online class, you know, kind of like master's class thing, but just make my own. And then with the videos I directed, I was thinking of doing like a director reacts, you know, videos, you know, to like the Green Day and this and that. Sure. Yeah. So I was thinking about doing that, but then those would be used to essentially advertise the class.
Yeah.
Because, you know, those videos get so many views, you know, meaning the Green Day videos and others, they just get so many views. I just thought, oh, well, you know, it seems like a good opportunity to do where, you know, I could do the class, and then, you know, use that as a vehicle to get it out there. You know, just life is busy, and so I just haven't done it. I mean, but I do love teaching, and I really very much appreciate, you know, people like you and others who, you know, are interested in learning about this stuff, because, you know, like you know, you're a great student. I mean, I can see it.
Well, tell your mom I loved her cameo, and you make me feel like a whore.
You don't even know which one she was.
She's the one with the fanny.
They all have fanny packs. What are you talking about?
And also, it's funny because I never really thought that my work was that special.
Oh, really?
You know, but that's just a part of me being insecure. Okay. And, you know, and I always wondered kind of like, well, what makes me me, you know? I mean, for a long time I did, you know, what makes my work special? And I realized eventually that, you know, and I tell my students this, you know, I in regard to them, but I'll say it in regard to me, I say, what made my work special was me, you know, is who I am.
Like your big Oscar like appearance in the Primus video, the tragedies a coming. So I always like that. That's something that's not. I mean, some directors do cameos, but that was like you did. It wasn't like a cameo. It was like a full proper like role in the video where you had like you had a big role in the video of the server like dancing and like serving. That's like
yeah. Yeah, with your work, with one's work, what's special about it is you. And what comes through in terms of what people see is they see you. They see you and the other actors. They see you in the sets. They see you in editorial. And it's a funny thing, you know, but I think that with me, what I was able to do was I was able to kind of with a loving heart, you know, bring out really good parts of performers and make them safe, help them feel safe so that they could give good performances and give the artistic parts of them and be accepting of that and help amplify that and help amplify that uniqueness about whatever they were, you know. And I think that that's the part that makes my work special. You know, I don't think I was necessarily that clever in the ways that a lot of music videos were clever at the time, but you know, but somehow it worked, you know, and somehow they had a special magic. You know, I wish I was able to work longer. I think I think I had a lot of room to do really cool work.
The director of the video was Mark Kohr, who was just the hottest video director in the 90s. Mark did When I Come Around, Longview, Basket Case, Good Riddance, Time of Your Life by Green Day, Just a Girl from No Doubt, Salvation by Rancid, The Rascal King by the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, The Distance by Cake, and Hand in My Pocket, Alanis Morissette, to name a few. He did a ton more than that. He was the in-demand video director.
Here is Redundant on MTV Live.
All right.
the music video for Primus, like Jerry was a race car driver, Tommy the Cat, My Name is Mud, and Cake, The Distance, received like heavy rotation on MTV. And a number of videos were also, of your own videos, were in Beavis and Butt-Head. Like I counted like more than 7 videos, like Letters to Cleo and like Sausage and Soul Coughing and Green Day Primus. And your videos were also shown on 120 Minutes, the Kara's Flowers, Sub Disco, and the Drawbreaker Fireman. So how would you describe your own like personal relationship with MTV and like the whole like censorship, like even like I read online that they refused to air the video for less than Jake Dopeman because of the lyrical content and poppiness, and the Primus video was only aired like 4 times on MTV, and like the Geek Sting Breath video also. So do you have like a good relationship, or is it like kind of like mixed?
Yeah, well, no, that's a great question, boy. You know, I tell you, you know, you're so kind for, you know, kind of knowing this stuff and asking about it. You know, after high school, after college, you know, Jerry, I think, kind of liked my work, and so he was interested in who's editing, you know, my stuff. Okay, and so he hired the editor I work with, who was a friend of mine. You know, we both kind of came up together. And Jerry's kind of he's a really smart guy. Okay, and he's a real conversationalist, and he'd seen a lot because he was, you know, Devo, and so he was kind of a famous guy. And so Jerry, one time we were in Hollywood at dinner with he and my editor, with Alan and his wife and my wife, and but I don't know if we're married at the time. And he said, you know what, Mark, why the record companies like your work? He said, because they know that when you make a video for them, it will get shown. Okay, 3.5 years ago, my son wanted to get a guitar. Okay, and we went to this guitar shop in Oakland, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's Billy's Guitar Shop. Okay.
Oh, Broken Guitars.
Yeah, Broken Guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Broken Guitars. And because my son, he wanted a guitar, and I thought, God, I hope I see Billy. It'd be great to see Billy, And but chances are probably low. But a friend of mine, this guy Boots Riley, and Boots, he's known for directing the film Sorry to Bother You. Okay, he's an African American guy. He's a rapper. But anyway, Boots was it. Boots went and he saw Billy. I was like, it'd be great to see Billy, I was talking to the guy there who's working there, and he said, hey, we got to recognize who one another were. And he said, oh, Mark, I'm Brett from the band. You made a video for us. I was in the band Rancid. Okay, I was the drummer. Okay. I was like, oh yeah. No, I remember you. Yeah, totally. And he was great. We talked, and he gave me a real compliment. He said, you know what, Mark, who you were? And I was like, no. And he said, you were the guy who, if you made a video for someone, you would make them famous, And I was like, wow. Boy, God, that's so nice of you, Brett, to say, because I didn't view myself that way. I just thought I was just making these things, and that just gave me a little bit of perspective on the work I was doing. Is that interestingly, I think that MTV. I think that I had a good relationship with MTV. I didn't really know. I was fairly pretty shy person back then.
To your new pop video, Redundant.
New pop video.
What exactly is the story behind that? There's a lot of people sort of walking in and out. And
yeah, it came out of Mark Kohr's Twisted Little Brain about. It's based on this animation piece that's back in 1982 or something like that. So I can't remember what it's called, but it's people doing repetitive motion and things.
And at one time I did actually have a meeting, but it was later. It was just after I'd done one of the Green Day videos. I'm not sure. It's the one with the people going around in circles,
Oh, Redundant?
Redundant. Yeah, after I did Redundant, I remember I went and I met with somebody at MTV, but I was a pretty shy person. Like, I really didn't like having meetings with record company people. And I felt like, that classic, I guess, people call it like imposter syndrome, where you really don't feel like you're doing the thing that you do,
like an outsider.
Yeah, well, no, more like that I wasn't that talented, and so, I just kind of embarrassed about it. I just didn't feel like I had that much to say. And I did. I just didn't know how to do it, Like, I needed somebody, like myself, to say, okay, this is, how this works, which is, it's really good for you to meet people, and you may not think you're doing good work, but you're actually doing really interesting work, and it's all coming from you. It's not that you're just copying it, but you're actually producing this stuff. And you need to go and just talk with people, just meet them and say hi and make friendships, because friendships and loyalties are what this business is about, is making those connections and just meeting people. And this is how you do it,
Playing it. They won't play it anymore.
They won't?
They won't play it during the day. Wait, get this. And the excuse was, women are offended. I think
but with MTV, I know I did have videos that didn't show, like Geek Stink Breath, but we really didn't expect it to, like, they at the time, you see, what happened was before that, we made that video, Billy and the band said, we're not going to make any videos for the next album. Okay. We're not going to make any. And I was like, okay, I respect that. And because they were like, we don't want to be sellouts, because I wanted to make another video for them, because we had the successes, the popularity of the prior videos. And so I called up. That was like, I can't remember, that was maybe a Sunday, but the Monday morning, I called up the record company. I called up this woman named Julia Roberts. Okay, Julia Robertson. Julia Roberts is the actress. Julia Robertson was the record company producer. And I said, hey, Julia, you know what? I got a call from Billy this weekend. And he told me he wants me to shoot the teeth being pulled and maybe put it in a music video. What do you think? I said, because I think it'd be cool to shoot it with this special camera that has a special lens. It's like a rod that can actually go into the guy's mouth, and I'll shoot, that, and then I'll shoot a little bit of stuff. Like I could have a second camera and shoot some other stuff. So if we want to turn it into a video, we can do it, And she goes, that sounds great. Let me talk to my people, and why don't you get a budget together? Okay. I was trying to work it, like I wanted the job to happen. And so I got with I wrote something up, a plan, and I, got with the woman who was producing for me at the time, and she wrote up a budget, and we shot that. I thought of a way to cover the band because, I was like, okay, because Billy said, oh yeah, well, this friend, the guy we shot, that he had done too much speed, and,
yes.
It had led to his teeth rotting, and I was like, okay, so let me think of something, a visual treatment for that. And so I designed that little room that was a stage set, it was made as a stage set with a low ceiling. So they're kind of like confined in a space. And then I shot it with a little video camera. At the time, of course, right now, small video cameras are really easy, but at the time they weren't. Okay. And so we got this called like a lipstick cam with a tiny little lens. And we put on the end of a pole, like a selfie stick. But there were no selfie sticks at that time. Okay, like it wasn't a thing at all. It was like non-existent. Okay, and phones didn't even have cameras at that time. Okay, so but we put on the end of the stick and went, so it would move in this kind of funny way. And then so we shot them on video and we put it on the television with an old style television, cathode ray tube, where it was a scanning TV. And then we put it on its side. And then we put it on its side and put the image sideways, okay, of these takes. And then we shot that with a film camera. And we had a big magnet, a Gauss magnet that would bend the beam of the cathode ray tube, okay? And then we got that film, and I heard about a guy who was developing film in his bathroom, in a bathtub. Okay, so he'd have the chemicals, and he would just spool the film off into the chemicals. Okay, so he's doing it by hand, and so the film would stick to itself, and the emulsion would pull off, And so we did that. And then that's processed, and then that was transferred. And so it had those layers of all that information, meaning the video bent, and then the film, and in that space. And then I told my editor, I said, okay, and I want you to edit as if you're on speed. Okay, is it like everything, like you're going ahead of the timing? You're advanced of the beat. Okay, so there's the beat, the visual is don't go with the beat, but you're kind of going before the beat and on the beat, before the beat and on the beat, and then we, so we cut the whole thing together, and we gave it to MTV, and MTV wanted to show their videos because they needed to show Green Day videos, like they, because there is want for them, but it had that topic of speed, and so what they did is they did show it. But they will give beforehand warning like
the new video was directed by Mark. That would be Mark Kohr, who by the way
He has directed all of Green Day's videos, and here's a little word to the wise. If you're the least bit squeamish, be ready to cover your eyes when watching this one. It's a little intense. New on 120 minutes. Here's from Green Day with Geek, Stink Breath.
It showed for a week or something like that, for some period that where MTV was able to do that introduction, and that it was that it worked for them. And what was great is that people did talk about it. Like I remember being on the street, I think in New York, and somebody said, "Oh my God, did you see that new Green Day video? With that guy with the teeth being pulled?" And I was like, "Oh God, that's so great!" You
guys just did a new video, right? It's coming out like next month. We don't know if it's gonna come out. I don't know. Why? MTV doesn't want to play it because of the drug reference.
And the lesson, Jake, it's funny, like there were different things that they would ban MTV, like you couldn't show like a woman's torso, or a woman's butt, without her head, okay, for a while, and so you just knew, okay, I can't, if I shoot this, it's not gonna, and it makes it in the edit, it's not gonna show, they're gonna kick it back, and so you just knew at the time, like everybody was working with essentially what can be shown and what can't be shown. And the Dopeman, that video, I don't know, it's just, I guess, I think it was, unfortunately, the record company should have probably had some conversations with people at MTV first, because the record company was more upset with the content of the song, okay, just the subject, okay, and just the word Dopeman. They were more upset with that than the video. I mean, the video was kind of, sure, it was, but it wasn't, it was a very playful video.
MTV ended up not playing it though. They claimed that there was too many drug references in the video, and I just don't think they liked the song or the video, because MTV was playing plenty of videos in the 90s with drug references.
I love doing videos. I just wish MTV would play them, because I have a blast doing them. I love.
Beavis and Butt-Head, we made the Primus video. Okay.
Mr.Krinkle?
Mr.Krinkle, yeah.
Krinkle, yeah.
Mr.Krinkle. And in it, I had the guy on fire. Okay.
Yes.
And he as an element. And it was because my brother and I, we always thought it was hilarious how in disaster films at the time, there would be something would happen, and then a guy would run through the frame on fire, like, it's on fire, and then go out of frame, or he'd fall, and then they cut, and I was like, oh my God, it'd be so great just to have a guy on fire, it'd be kind of funny, and so we did the guy on fire, and what's crazy is when I went from San Francisco to work in LA, at Satellite Films, I was with my rep, and I was showing her a video of the making of Krinkle. Okay, you could see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And Spike Jones, Spike came into the room, and he watched. He was like, "Oh man, that's so cool! That guy on fire, that's so fun." And I said the same thing I just told you. I and my brother and I always thought it was hilarious. Guy on fire, that element, And then a year and a half later, or 2 years later, Spike through,
he did a video, yeah,
running down the street.
Yeah.
And I said, "Ah, Spike, that's so great. You did that too. That's so funny." And he's like, "What? You know?" And I'm like, dude, you don't need to say that, you know? Like, it's okay. You know, we all get inspired by each other, you know?
How come that guitar's in the hospital? Okay. Okay, you don't have to say anything.
So Mike Judge put that in the video, right?
Yes.
And that turned into the fire, 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 fire. And then some kid caught his trailer on fire, not by the fault of the video probably, but they blamed MTV for it. And they blamed Beavis and Butt-Head and the fire, fire, fire. And so that got pulled. Okay. And then, but Mike Judge, I don't know why he liked my videos, but he showed a lot of them. And at the time, I was like, damn, I should make a reel, like, meaning, you know, of my work that is just the Beavis and Butt-Head videos, you know? And you know, and you know, I think back and I go, damn, you know, why didn't I go and meet him? Why did, you know, I should have just been like, hey, you guys, you know, he's doing such great work that's so funny, and he seems to like my work. Like, I would love to meet him, you know, but I didn't, you know, again, because I was shy.
It was sort of a homegrown, family spun video, and it's one of my favorites. So, Mr.Krinkle.
Like a personal photo album, you know. I mean, they're pictures like on film, and they are prints, you know. And I don't even have the negatives anymore. I mean, I wish I did, you know. Anyway, the only thing that I have, I mean, you know, it's funny because for me personally, you know, it was very, because of, you know, my daughter being born with her difficulties, and me, and you know, and that, and just the whole environment of it taking me out of the business, you know, on a certain level emotionally, it was very hard for me to not do that work anymore. You know, it's very disappointing. You know, I'd work very hard at it, you know, and you know, it's hard to, because it's hard to even load that sentence and say it was very, you know, I worked very hard at it, because I truly did, you know, just engage in all kinds of personal study, you know, to do that kind of work, you know. And I did it because I really love that work, you know. And I really loved coming up with ideas and playing with ideas for music videos. And it was a lot of fun for me. And I had, you know, essentially formed and made my brain be something that could, you know, produce a variance of work and produce it for, you know, artists. And so it was so disappointing for me in a way that I kind of, you know, my wife and I were falling out of the business, you know. It wasn't that we just stepped out. You know, that's kind of an easy way to think of it, like, oh yeah, you know, we decided to leave the business. No, it was like the whole environment came apart, okay? And even the social environment of it fell apart. Like, you know, I think I told you before that there's, you know, there's really no space in Hollywood for sick kids. And, you know, like we would, like we lost a lot of friendships, you know, just because people were afraid, you know, they didn't want to deal with us, you know, because they were afraid that, you know, somehow that like our bad luck might rub off on them or something. And it was hard. It was so hard losing all of these social bonds, you know, all of these friendships and stuff. And you know, the company I was with, you know, I had left them because I had to deal with this stuff, you know. And you know, but I left on really good terms. I was like, okay, I got to leave because I can't have you guys sell me and then me not be able to show up for the job, because I can't have you guys look bad, you know. And it wasn't like I went to another company. I just I just had to go, you know. And then, you know, they had a Christmas party, and I was still essentially a part of the company. Like my money was still in the company. And like I wasn't invited to the Christmas party. Like I actually, my wife and I just happened upon it occurring. Okay. Like it was at this place. Oh, well, what's everyone doing here? You know, at a restaurant. Really, it was emotionally really difficult, you know. And so I didn't really retain much from it because I kind of had to separate from it because it was so painful for me. Here, let me just see if I have one thing. Hang on. There were notebooks where, you know, it has a binding, and you can't pull the pages out, you know. Okay. Yeah. And I would just always have one, and I would fill it, okay, from the front, you know, all the way to the back, okay. And it was these were my ongoing work notebooks, okay. And when I worked on ideas or anything, I'd write down, my thoughts, you know, like I'd listen to songs and I'd write down ideas, you know, just hundreds of ideas, right? And I'd make sketches and stuff, and I just filled these, you know, I'd fill them up, you know, and I had stacks of them, you know, stack of them, you know, and so I still have this one. I think I have a few others, but I just did it in kind of memory of that time, because, you know, I had to really produce a ton of ideas, you know, and you know, like I tell my music video students, I say, you know, the thing you want to be able to do as a professional music video director, a professional director, professional image maker, is you need to be able to come up with ideas every day that people want to see and that you want to make, you know. And that's a unique combination, because, you know, it means that the stuff needs to be new to where it evokes consciousness, and it needs to be something that excites you, that's new to you to make, you know. And I say that's not inspiration, it's work, and I'll teach you how to do that. And that's what this was all about. Okay. And so like this has notes from the Fastball video, including a drawing by the art director, you know.
Oh wow. Oh yeah, that's from the sets. Oh wow, that's really cool. Wow.
Yeah. And so this was let me see this. I'm sure it's just the same one, but you know, so she wrote this up, you know, and the funny thing was, here's another thing from life from France, okay, and you know, from inspiration from France is the Fastball video. That set is basically from there was a French band that was famous.
Yes, Rita Mitsuko.
Yeah, Deborah, my girlfriend and I at the time, that summer, we went to like this battle of the bands, and they were a small band. They were right in the Zuko, and you know, they performed, and you know, again, like I was in college, right? And she got up there, you know, Deborah Winger, when she was young, okay, and she was, I can swear she was missing a tooth, okay, like like one of her eye teeth, you know, and she was getting up there and she's just singing so well, and I was like, oh my God, like she's incredible, you know. And that album, the first album, had a radio with a little bridge with people walking into the radio, you know.
Okay.
And but it was like the radio was opened, you know, so I could see the insides, and I was like, that is so cool. And then when I became a music video director, I was like, I want to make a video where people are inside the radio, okay. And so that's where that came from. Yeah, so you know, wow. So you can see it's all like, you know,
linked. You know, oh wow.
We all take from different sources, you know. Yeah. You know, you get to do these very concise little pieces. They're short, and you get to exercise making a visual language, and you get to exercise having kind of like a, you know, complex idea that may even be kind of in conflict with itself, but you're able to mix things so that you create something that has a really new vibe. And in terms of for your career, you know, you can show that, and people can really get a sense that you are in control as a director. That as a director, as a creative person, you can write something that's concentrated, specific, and particular. And so for me, and then I say, you know, it's to me, music videos are an outgrowth of what's always been here, which is people's theater. Okay. And I say, you know, people's theater, you know, meaning that, you know, in Europe, you know, through the decades, you know, there was like, you know, the people go to before movies and before radio, before electronic media, there was like a theater, and people go, and there'd be these short acts. There'd be like the magician, there'd be a guy that, you know, that spoke for the chicken. There would be like a ventriloquist. There would be, you know, the dancing girl. There'd be a guy with a song, you know, there'd be a hypnotist, you know. And I say, you know, the wonderful thing about music videos is it's that combination, and there will always be a band, you know, there'd be a little band, you know, and they would play music and with the person who's performing, you know, and people go and they'd really enjoy these concentrated little acts that had a little trick, you know. And that's what music videos are, is that they are people's theater, in which you see the popular thing, you hear the popular song, and you see some little trick, some little act, some little thing that's very unique, but it's very concentrated. And it's not very long, and it's not very heady, but it's special, you know. And I think that's again, you know, just that's that thing. That's what I think that we love about this form of entertainment. And the other part of that too is that, you know, there's a philosopher, there's a guy, Alan Watts, and he's really wonderful. You know, he has great, you know, he was alive in the 50s and 60s and died in 1974, I think. And, you know, he talks about a lot of really amazing things. And like, if you want to really understand people in story, man, listen to Watts, because he's awesome. And at one point he said, you know, that through the ages, when we had extra time on our hands, what we would do is we would sing and we would dance. And the unfortunate thing is that now we watch other people sing and we watch other people dance. And I think that that's the other part about music videos, is that they key into that base aspect of human nature, which is we love song and we love dance. And the different aspects of music video, essentially visual aspects, etc., you could say are the dance. You know, sometimes, of course, often we literally do have people dancing in our music videos. And then we do have people singing. You know, we don't always have the singer in there, but for me, what I always tried to do was find interesting ways to incorporate the performance, incorporate the singer, because I do feel that if you're able to do that, you're able to also give to the audience that part, which is connection to the singer, connection to the performer, because the performer, they have something that's unique about them as a person, you know, and that it's nice to connect that part.
Now, you did the video that we saw before of Mark Kohr, and he's done stuff for a ton of people, from Soul Coffee, and I can't even mention all the bands. But,
long list.
But I love it. He really brings out a real colorful side in the video of everybody. I mean, just, how was that experience making that video, Patrick?
It was really fun. I got to, like, be 5 Petros playing the violin in, like, this forest.
Yeah, it was cool. It really came out great.
He's really sweet, and he was really just like, he helped it move along really well. And he laughed a lot too. Yeah, he's a really funny guy.
So it kept you in a good mood. And he has a good laugh. He made it more painless, which is really.
It's also a great collaborator, which we always like. You know, we like to collaborate with our producer Brad, and Mark was another person like that who was great to collaborate using our ideas and mixing them with his own. It was great. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Until 12 seconds. Larry.